Whatever. So anyways, let's continue on. All right. Don't speak either. You'll be fine. Concentrate on me. His speech was quick and short until Eckhart stopped and looked closer at the rock. Oh, okay. So I guess I should mention also, at this point, Yvonne, Mir, Athena, and Eckhart have gone to investigate the caverns. For the old Maplers, you would know this as the Dead Mines. This is where you would originally go to face off against one of the very first bosses in Maplestory called Zakum. Zakum was initially a statue that was worshipped by a village near it, and it was just constantly demanding sacrifices to it. I think that's what the story was, but it's been a long time since I looked up the story for it. However, in my story, what I've done is say that Zakum was actually a seven-headed Hydra, come from the Land of Dragons, which again is a whole universe of its own on a story for that I have been wanting to work on for a while, but that's a whole nother universe. I think they call it the Dread Hydra Zakum, and he was just a tyrant. So when he came to Osiria, he was defeated by another dragon named Saya, who will become important later on. And he was sealed within this statue, which was just one main statue that had 6 arms on it. So now, in this chapter, he has been freed, and Athena fell down a lava tube, and Eckhart went after her, and he has found her kind of dazed and confused among a big pile of rubble. The scene that I am going to be working on here was heavily inspired by a scene from the anime Full Metal Panic. So take it for what it's worth. I'm just kind of doing a version of it. And like I said, just take it for what it's worth. Hopefully it'll be entertaining for you all. Oh, hold on. Let me do the thing over here. There we go. All right. All right. Okay. It's lichens. Eckhart muttered. When his seal began to glow, his head pounding with a vengeance. Okay. All right. Slowly turned her head. To see the vibrant crimson. Would it be lichens or would it be moss? Crimson plant? Let's see. Okay. Okay, so they're not quite plants. Growths all over the rocks. Making it appear as though a great splash of blood were behind her. Okay. Eckhart bowed his head in relief from not only the pain, but also, let's see, but also knowing that Athena was all right. From the pain and knowing that Athena was all right. Relief from the seal and from knowing that Athena was all right. Okay. Carefully, he helped her. Oops. Come on. Carefully, he helped her stand. Then let's see. Stand. Then picked her up as he, let's see, as he what? Leapt up using Okay, so let's see. Still hear the cracking and still hear the thunder of falling rocks in, but it sounded as though it were far away. Okay, so we'll get to that here in a minute. I just want to make sure I included that because it was kind of bugging me. Using multiple seals. Leapt up out of the hole using multiple seals. Wait, my bow and... Okay, so we'll do this instead. There's no time. We need to leave now. Once out of the sink hole, Eckhart slung her onto his back as he slung her to his back and launched forward, making Athena nearly lost her grip as they streaked through the falling rocks. A dust trail following. Oh, wait. There we go. A dust trail following him wherever he went. What? Really? What the heck? Oh, one too many E's. I guess I see. Just as he was about to clear the mouth of the cave, a low rumble began to build behind them until Athena looked back, seeing a dust cloud surging at them. Eckhart? I know! I'm going as fast as I can! If only I have access to the If only I had access to the crystal power like the Guardians do, he thought. Or he hissed, straining and pushing his legs as hard as he could, trying to stay ahead of the cloud. They barely cleared the mouth of the cave when it collapsed. Yvonne! Mir, let's go! He shouted. Sprinting for the edge of town where the barrier edge of town and the barrier, while Zakum pounded on it, trying to break free. Okay, so I can get rid of all of that. That was just not necessary. I need some water. There we go. Much better. At least for a little while longer. Mir and Yvonne passed through the barrier with ease. Oh man. I'm suddenly very, very sleepy. But just as Eckhart was to pass through, he slammed into the invisible wall as Athena soared through, leaving him trapped on the inside. Oh, I need an R there. So Eckhart, what is wrong? There we go. What is wrong? Athena asked. Eckhart bowed his head as she knelt next to the barrier. Just before Richie launched his final attack, my charm came loose and was obliterated in the flames. Oh, okay. So something I should mention: the town where they're at, the Forest of the Dead in this story, All the zombies, there's a bunch of zombies that are contained within a village by a magical barrier. And the charm he's talking about here is a special kind of like passport, I guess you could say, that allows people to go in and out of the barrier as they please. If they don't have the charm, they can't get in, or if they lose the charm while they're inside, they can't get out. Okay, it was a long shot. When I thought your charm might work for two people in close contact, but I guess not. No, Eckhart. Do not lose heart. No. 1-0. I had a feeling this would happen, Athena. I'll hold them off as long as I can. As long as... Oh, come on. I'll hold them off as long as possible. For as long as possible. But I doubt... I'll be coming back. Athena refused to accept his answer and stepped through the barrier, grabbing his arm and picking him up. Grabbing his arm. Let's see. And hauling him to his feet as the mindless corpses began closing in on them. Closing in. I won't let you... I won't let you give in to despair. You are too important to me. She walked to the barrier and began passing through it again. What am I missing? Okay. Began passing through it again, holding onto Eckhart's hand. Just as they reached the point where both their hands... Just as their clasped hands were to pass through. No, through. Athena took the charm from her pocket and began holding it at the barrier. Allowing Eckhart to pass through. Eckhart looked back and Eckhart tried to push harder through the barrier. No, tired. Tried to push harder through the barrier. Let's see. What is... No. As the zombies closed in, but it seemed, the harder he tried to push through, the harder he tried. Okay, let's see, we can get rid of this. But it seemed... Why did I keep capitalizing it? I don't need to capitalize it. But the harder he tried, the more it resisted. Mir and Yvonne began to help pull Eckhart through when the corpses grabbed his legs, pulling him back. Eckhart cried out in pain as the force stretched his back. Okay, hold on, let's see. Just when he thought he could no longer stand the pain.
Ah, itchy head, itchy head. Ah.
Something he suddenly shot through. Suddenly shot through the barrier, landing atop Athena. Okay. Whoops. Eckhart tried to get up, but Athena held him close, held him tightly, not wanting to let go. After a long while, Athena and Eckhart looked back at the barrier, where they saw something the color in skin fading. Color in their skin fading. Standing on the inside of the barrier was an exact copy of Eckhart. Except that his hair was the purest white, and the markings on the mask were twisted into something far more sinister, while his red eyes glowed. Well, it seems the... Okay, hold on. Oh, come on! I hate when it does this. There we go. Well. It seems that you and I get to meet for the first time. Meet face to face for the first time, Eckhart. I must say that your summoning me was quite a feat on its own. But then to keep me contained for so long within your body is another feat in itself. The other Eckhart turned to the lifeless corpses, and in a single stare made all of them fly in random directions. I'm trapped here with the multi-headed lizard for now, but we will meet again, Eckhart. The cold look in his red eyes sent chills up Eckhart's spine as he turned and began to walk away. The barrier was holding back Zakum for the moment, but they would still have to give a report to the other masters about what. Eckhart, I want to ask you something, Athena said quietly. Eckhart turned to her, something close to understanding, seeming to understanding reflecting in his eyes. Yes, what is it? When you thought that rock behind me was covered in... No. Let's see. We're going to try rewriting that a little differently. Upon seeing the rock I lay on and thinking it was covered in my blood, did you fear that I would perish? There we go. That that sounds a little bit... Thinking my blood cover it. Eckhart looked away from her and put on his mask, staying silent for a while as they walked back to Herbtown. Yvonne looked to Mir and jerked his head to the side, as Mir reverted to her dragon form, and the two of them flew off. Athena's shoulders slumped a bit as Eckhart wouldn't reply to her question and began to follow after him, till Eckhart stopped and looked at her over his shoulder. Terrified, he said. Continuing to walk on only to be stopped by Athena, who ran up behind him and threw her arms round his chest, hugging him tightly while Eckhart placed a hand on hers. Come on, we need to get back to Grendel with this news, he said, pulling her hands away from him and continuing to walk on. Athena smiled as she followed. Even after all of that, he was still being the hero in all of this. What do you want? Okay. But let's see. Athena smiled as she followed. Even after all of that, he was still being the hero. In all of this. But that's what she loved about him, picking up her pace to a sprint as she followed after Eckhart. All right, changing scenes. Akuya took off his boot and polished it while his sister clung to him, seeming almost as if she were a 5-year-old child rather than a young woman, looking around in any direction from any noise that would come up. Jaden, I can't do this if you hold on to me so tightly, Akuya laughed. Jaden loosened her grip, but soon... Oh, come on. But soon... She clung to his arm from another strange noise, shutting her eyes and holding on. Shutting her eyes. Okay, let's see. We can get rid of that. Her white wings shifting to become comfortable. Akuya could only smile at her. Ever since she was a baby, she clung to him more than she ever did to their mother. She clung to him even more after it was found that she didn't have enough energy to sustain even the golden Alcana, and that her wings were too small for her to fly. It was almost as if Akuya was her shield. A noise outside the door, outside their door, made Akuya call forth his golden Alcana as in the shape of a chain mace. In the shape of a chain mace, ready to take action against whatever it was, whatever was coming. As the curtain that served as... Come on. Seriously? Oh wait, I don't need that word. That's what... The curtain that served as his door blew aside and revealed a man with long black hair, a black leather trench coat, and striking magenta eyes that resembled a dragon's. "Who are you?" Akuya asked as he calmed the Nalkana and stood to his full height, looking over the man. You can't be seraphim since you don't have any wings, yet your eyes say otherwise," Akuya observed. Quiet. I just have one question for you. Is Dia alive? The man asked bluntly. Akuya was taken aback by the question, as if it was more so a surprise that she wasn't. Let's see. I don't need that. That was just stupid sounding. You mean the sovereign Dia? Akuya asked, stunned. Okay. Akuya by surprise. You mean the sovereign Dia? Akuya asked. Does she have white wings and dresses in white clothes? The man asked. Yes, she does. And yes, she is very much alive. Where can I find her? The man asked, turning slightly so that he could see the large doom sword strapped to his back. I have no knowledge of her whereabouts. Akuya. Not Acacia. Kuya. There we go. Stuttered. The man bowed in thanks. The man... Didn't I just add this? Didn't I already add this? Dismiss. The man bowed his thanks and then left. He pulled the hood of his cloak up and took the quickest route into the forest from Herbtown. If he was seen... Come on. If he was seen, could cause problems he didn't want. Dismiss. Come on. I hate when it does this. Sometimes the this thing over here, the Grammarly gets all glitchy and then it starts doing weird stuff. Okay. If he was seen, it could cause problems he didn't want. As he ran through the forest, he heard that celestial song from the bar, making him stop and look around to find where it was coming from. He followed the sound to a clearing where the woman from the club stood, spreading her wings wide and soaking up the sun as small waves like burning edges of paper ran up each feather into her body. Dia, is that you? He asked, carefully walking into the clearing and reaching for the doom out of habit. The woman picked her head up from having it tilted to the sky and opened her green eyes, which looked exactly like dragons. Yes, my child. It is I, Dia. My, how you've grown over the years, she said with a smile, as she folded her enormous wings and walked to him. Eleanor slowly walked up to the outer ring of the clearing, to the edge of the clearing, following... Let's see. After following dragon, or after... Okay, hold on. After tracing dragons... Oh, dang it, I hate doing that! Dragon's presence to this spot. There are some things that I would like answered. I want to know why it is I can control the Dark Seraphim. Dia seemed almost saddened as she came closer to him and placed her hands on the side of his head. You don't even remember who you are, do you? Dragon seemed confused. Who I am? He asked. Yes. The attack on our village must have left your memories locked away. Dragon eyed her for a moment when something, a memory perhaps, rolled through his mind. It sounded as if there was screaming mixed with the sound of buildings roaring with flames, making him flinch. So you do remember some trace of it, don't you? Let's see. I'm sorry it had to come to you this way, but you aren't completely human. In fact, you are half seraphim. Dragon backed away slightly as the news hit him, while in the distance Eleanor opened her eyes. Eleanor's eyes widened. She had been teaching him a technique that strongly resembled the Dark Seraphim. She'd been teaching him a technique that strongly resembled the Dark Seraphim. So much so that she called it as such. But Dragon must have found that what he was controlling wasn't the spell, but the Dark Seraphim itself. If that is the case, please tell me everything. Most of what I remember is from about 3 years ago. Dia sat down next to him and thought back. You may not believe it, but nearly 100 years ago is when I met your father. He was a strong human warrior by the name of Sir Marcus. I can't believe how much you resembled him. The only difference... save for his hair being gold. In fact, that sword you carry was his. That sword you carry was his. Your carry is his. Dia said wistfully, placing a slender hand on the guard and running her finger over the engraving. Sir Marcus. Within... on the guard. When I first met him, he was badly injured near our city, just on the other side of the Cave of Life, under where the Temple of Time resides now. I took him in, dressed his wounds, and when he was healed, he asked our leader at the time, and when he was healed, he asked our leader if it were possible to stay, since he had nowhere left to turn. Nowhere left to return to. Our leader agreed. And before long, and we soon fell in love and married. Not long after you were born. When you were old enough, even though you were part of 2 different worlds, we wanted to see if you could wield a Nalkana. It was then we found you were able to control the Dark Nalkana. And from then on, you were... What is wrong? There we go. And from then on, you were revered. And from then on, you were revered. Felkiar, welcome, welcome. Thanks for coming. I hope you're having a good evening, morning, night, whatever. By almost everyone. Oh, cool. So, what are we drawing right now? You revered by almost every. By almost everyone for being able to control such a powerful weapon. When you turn 10. As far as me, myself, right now, I'm actually doing okay. Art fight, and it's yearly thing where you draw other people's characters, and I'm doing a bunny boy right now. Okay. Is it kind of like trying to draw in like a combat situation or something like that, or is it kind of like more so like an art trade even? Turn 10. There was an attack on our city, and the attackers took most of us hostage. Your father, the brave knight that he was, tried to fight them off, but he fell in battle. We weren't even given the chance to bury him before we were all taken away and sent to another world. You, however, somehow managed to escape. More so an art trade, but with points, and you get on a team. Currently, it's Seafoam or Stardust. I'm on Stardust. Okay, so how exactly do you determine points? Do you is it based on like art technique or what the pose is or what weapons they're using or kind of I'm just curious as to what it is. That's all I'm really more so worried about. Okay, so they tally up the points at the end of the month. I'm just curious on how how the points are determined, really, I guess you could say. That was over 90 years ago. And now that I am freed from my prison, I can be here for you should you need me. My beloved Let's see. There we go. Couldn't. Let's see. Let's try this. And we were taken. Okay. So I guess the more detail you give in it, the more points you give, and like if you were to do like a really, I guess for lack of better terms, so for like the more detail you put into the drawing and more action, more like if you were to give it a background and like an action shot or something like that, just all of it combined together. If you were to do like a hyper realistic drawing of someone's character, then that gets you like, for lack of better terms, gets you 100 points. Whereas if you were to do something like more cartoony, you might get maybe 50 points or 30 points or something like that. Is that kind of how it goes? Okay. Okay. Free. Let's see. of my prison. Please, Mother, don't use that name. Not right now. It isn't safe. Oh, okay. Nice. Very nice. Well then, what should I call you? Dia asked, putting her arm around his shoulder. I go by the name Dragon for now. Dia nodded and kissed his forehead. Very well, Dragon, my son. I must go. For now, but I am never very far away. But I am never far away, Dia said, spreading her wings once more. Come on. Here we go. Flying in the direction, flying toward their home city. Again, okay. Eleanor was stunned. He was older than she was. And yet, Dragon looked so young. Was it because he was part seraphim? His mother must have been at least 130 and still looked like she was in her late teens. Whatever the case, Eleanor crept back to her teleportation spot and left him in the clearing with his thoughts, watching as Dia flew away. For now, she would keep this information to herself. All right. So we've gone through the entire chapter doing the major edits, at least on what I think were major edits. Now it's time to go from the top and check out all the stuff that is just, that Grammarly just doesn't like. Okay, now. So now let's go all the way to the top and read through it again. Jack half-heartedly ran from the tree he was hiding behind and ducked under another. He didn't have his weapons and left his cloak in his hut. Jack was outnumbered and quickly getting tired, and there was only a hollowed-out tree in the center of a clearing, he guessed. And only a hollowed-out tree in the center of a clearing, he guessed, could keep him safe. If only Helen had been here, she could have eliminated some of his exhaustion. Standing up, he sprinted for the tree, grunting and growling as he ran. He leapt for it, stretching out his arm as far as it would go, when a net rose from under the leaves and caught him in midair, yanking him away from safety. No! He called, as swarms of kids came flooding out from between the trees, yelling and screaming battle cries. One of the small kids came up and pointed a finger at him as if he were holding a gun.
Give up! You have nowhere left to hide,
the child demanded. Jack playfully put his arms up, pretending to beg for his life. "Oh, please, Master Jack, please spare me," he pleaded, trying in vain to suppress a laugh as much as he could while the child poked him in the ribs. "No, Black Mage. We've got your disciples, and we have Eleanor. Give up or I'll shoot." Jack again pleaded, trying to keep from laughing as the kids brought the other guardians into the area. I need some water. All right. All right, I give. Just please don't hurt me, he begged as the child ordered the other kids to let him down and pull the net from around him.
I will let you live, but you must promise that you will never do anything like this again.
Helen stifled a laugh. The little boy was just too cute, trying to sound big and strong, wearing Jack's sunship hat covering most of his face. I promise. Please, just don't hurt me. Just please don't hurt me, Jack pleaded once more. The boy pretended to holster his gun and pushed Jack over.
Very well, but just know that if you try anything, you'll be sorry.
The boy nodded and then pushed the hat out of his eyes as he turned and walked away. But Jack had other plans as he got up and quickly picked the kid up, tickling him and making him squeal and scream.
Help! Help, my friends!
The boy called as more kids came rushing out of the forest with homemade bows and plunger arrows, branch swords and staffs, while others had sponges for shuriken. Jack pretended to be hit from all sides as each of the weapons hit him, jerking from side to side, then dramatically grabbed at his chest and fell to the ground. All the kids surrounded him as he lay still, while the one with his hat approached. Let's see. Staring hard as Jack lay still. There we go. That's a little better. I'm dead, Jack, he whispered, shutting his eyes again. The kid then set his small foot on Jack's shoulder and took a proud stance.
The Black Mage is dead,
he announced, making all the kids cheer loudly, begging to play again.
I want to be Jack this time, shouted one. I want to be Lillian, called another. I want to be Helen, called a little girl who wore Helen's black universe hat, covering her eyes and making it hard to see.
I'm sorry, guys, but I'm pooped. We need a rest, Jack said as he got up and sat down on a fallen log. As he sat down on a fallen log.
Oh, come on, one more time, please, the first boy begged.
Jack shook his head repeatedly as Helen picked up the girl with her hat and pulled it out of her eyes. He's right. We need a break. We'll play again tomorrow, all right? He's right. We need a break. We'll play again tomorrow, all right? Matthew chimed in, slumping beside Jack and pulling the water canteen from his belt. The kids made a disappointed sound as they left, splitting off into different groups, each pretending to be their favorite guardian on some adventure. Jenny laughed as she leaned against a tree and caught her breath. For the past few mornings after their return from Ludibrium, they're waking up to play a massive game of tag was the norm for them, or playing as though it were the last battle between the Guardians and the Black Mage. It's a shame they don't know that they're playing something we'll eventually have to do, Olson commented as he watched the kids leave, while Jenny sat beside Jack, leaning against him.
I think it's better that way. If these children knew the horrors we face, their perfect happy world would no longer be that, Helen surmised solemnly.
Polkapans, welcome, welcome. I hope you're at least mildly entertained by what you hear and see today. How you doing? Hopefully well.
Speaking of horrors, have any of you talked to Ozzy since we returned? He seems kind of down, Jenny commented as she looked back to Olson.
I haven't had the chance. Whenever I think I have a little time to talk to him, something else pulls me away. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are in chat, Polkapins over here is a friend of mine. She is also a fellow streamer. Be sure and go and check them out. Give them a follow and a punch in the face and tell them I told you to do so. Polkapins is a variety streamer. Does pretty much all kinds of stuff. And she hasn't streamed in a while, but be sure and be on the lookout for when her next stream pops up. And Polka, I'm doing pretty good myself. Being the 4th of July is tomorrow. I've just got a little bit of work to do in the morning, and then we're going to have a barbecue later in the day. Yum, yum, yum. All right. Well, you heard it first here, ladies and gents. Polka Pens, hopefully, will be streaming soon. All right. Oh, boy. Well, you have a little time now. Go. I'll fill you in if something should come up, Jack said as he took another drink of water. Olson nodded and jogged back to the village, asking Aran if he had seen Ozzy. Aran directed him to the medical tent, where the boy had been since the day they returned. Olson ran to the tent and peered in, seeing Ozzy sitting on his cot and looking down at the ring in his hands, turning it over and thinking about his fallen master Geras. Ozzy, there you are. Come out into the light. It'll help you feel better, Olson offered. Ozzy shook his head, staring down at the ring. Olson stood over him, crossing his arms as he leaned against a tent post. Did that ring belong to your master? Let's see. Olson asked. Ozzy nodded and slipped it back onto his hand, touching the tiny silver wings mounted on the top. It's called the Blessing of the Angels. Geras said he'd gotten it in a trade for some clothes he was no longer using. He also said that when the wearer is in mortal danger, the angels will defend him. Ozzy explained, hanging his head as he took out a kunai throwing knife loaded in his black avarice claw, and looked it over. What happened to your master? Olson asked, his memory still somewhat fuzzy. Ozzy firmly slid the kunai back into the claw and sighed heavily. When we arrived in Helios Tower, my brother in training was the reader, while the book pulled Geras and me into it. We were about to face the Dark Dragon when things went wrong. For whatever reason, my brother couldn't take the intensity anymore and closed the book. As the sky darkened, it broke our concentration and allowed the Dark Dragon to grab Geras. I tried to help him, but he told me to return to the palace and threw me his ring. I was halfway back to the palace when the book shut, and it stayed that way for so long that I nearly became a permanent part of Ledron. However, Akuya and Jaden ensured that never happened, teaching me how to use the ring. That's when Lillian opened the book, and you came to get me. Olson nodded and patted him on the back. I know it might take some time, but when you're ready, I'd be willing to continue training you. Ozzy nodded his thanks as Olson smiled and left. Just as he exited the tent, Jack came walking up, dressed in his armor and checking the bullets in his new Infinity pistol. Hey, this guy named Nogong just invited us to train at his dojo. He said some of his more advanced students needed to mix up their training, and Mom said she'll help keep our edge too. Olson agreed, going to his hut and changing into his new red pirate clothes, clamping on his black mamba and slinging his betrayal dagger to his side, checking to make sure that the spare clip of Huabi shuriken was buckled to his belt, meeting the others at the boat dock. It wasn't long until they sailed across the sky toward Mulong, where they would be for the next few days. Oof, I need some water. So, for those who are in chat, does anybody have any plans for 4th of July? At least for my American audience. I don't know if there are any international audience members, but if there are, what's up, what you got planned. But for my American audience, what do you have any plans for 4th of July? Eating ice cream and do sparklers. Ooh. Barbecuing with the family. Nice, nice, nice. That's what I'm going to be doing. Just a, well, I mean, not a big old barbecue, but going to have some carne asada, some fresh salsa, which I'll probably end up making. Some carne asada tacos. And being that I have to go to work in the morning a little bit, I'll probably see if I can, on my way home from work, I'll see if I can drop by the grocery store, and I'll see if I can pick up the ice cream thing. Sounds like a good idea, Felkyar. I'll probably see if I can drop by the grocery store and pick up a thing of ice cream, so that way once it's all said and done, just have a big old scoop. Now, exactly what I will get, I'm not sure. My kind of sort of favorite is actually mint chocolate chip. But I don't know. Maybe I'll drop by and see if I can get like a thing of like Neapolitan ice cream. It's either mint chip or Neapolitan. Maybe even just some straight up just some classic vanilla. Yeah, mint chip is based. I mean, the best ones though, I think it's the like the Haagen-Dazs, the green ones, the green mint chocolate chip ones, because I think Breyers has some white mint chocolate chip, but the best one is the I think it's, I want to say it's Dryers, not Breyers with a B, Dryers with a D. It's green. It's a little soft. It's like a little softer texture. It hits a little different. I don't know. Anyways, going on. Athena saw them off before returning to her hut, grabbing her bow and arrows, then leaving for the eastern perimeter where Eckhart had been stationed for night patrols. Knowing him, though, he would be nearly impossible to find, as he was a night walker, an elite ninja branch serving the Empress. But it might be easier to spot him since it was during the day. Oh, let's see. There we go. Many times when she came to her post in the morning, she would find Eckhart fast asleep next to a tree, while his guardian fairy Umbra floated around and struggled to keep watch, until she too would fall asleep and go back to her world. This morning, however, she found Eckhart standing on a branch, which was odd since his shift was just ending. However, Athena was glad he was visible, so she didn't have to spend half her shift looking for him. Nimbly, Athena jumped up to the tree branch and put her arms around him, resting her chin on his shoulder. "Good morning, Eckhart," she softly said into his ear. Eckhart turned his head slightly and nodded, turning his attention back to the perimeter, yawning under his mask and shaking his head, trying to stay awake. "I trust the night watch was uneventful?" Athena asked, hugging him tighter. Eckhart sighed and placed a hand on Athena's. Oops. Come on, stop being stupid. "Nothing major to report. For minor events, a stray hankling tried to get through the perimeter. We managed to chase it away," he replied, pulling Athena's hand from his chest, turning around to her and slightly bowing his head. I leave the perimeter to you, Athena," he said, about to turn and leave, but turned back turned back, took off his mask, and kissed her before leaping from branch to branch toward the village. Athena touched her lips and smiled. He was slowly opening up to her, even if he was a bit naive. Let's see. Let's see. What is this one over here? Ah, okay. That's what I thought. Okay. Okay. You two are getting along just fine, called Mir, landing next to Athena on the branch, folding her wings comfortably and patting her shoulder. Eckhart is still reserved, though he is slowly opening his heart, Athena answered, pulling her bow over her shoulders. Mir laughed and crossed her arms, looking out over the perimeter. How is your relationship with Yvonne progressing? Athena asked. Mir tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear and smiled when Athena heard struggling behind her, firing an arrow that pinned Yvonne's sleeve to the tree. Athena, he growled, using the arrow to pull himself onto the branch, straddling it and pulling the arrow out before haphazardly balancing on the thick branch to reach them. Did you really have to shoot me? Oh. He said, okay. Come on, stop doing that. Did you have to shoot me? He asked agitatedly, wobbling back and forth as he tried to keep his balance while handing back her arrow. This is the eastern border. Anything behind me I'm going to assume is an enemy. Athena smiled as she returned the arrow to the quiver. Athena! Lady Athena! Called the small voice of a child who came running with a small note, dressed in makeshift armor and a yellow tablecloth for a cape. Athena jumped down and took the note, reading over it quickly. What does it say? Mir called, her wings becoming fidgety as she thought of going away from Herbtown for a few days. She was getting restless since there was nothing much for them to do. It's from Grendel. There is activity near the Mine of the Dead he would like us to investigate. Corinne and her troops will take over for us while we are gone. So why doesn't Grendel, Dances, or Jin take care of it? Yvonne asked, clumsily climbing back down as Mir glided down and put her arms around his, resting her head on his shoulder. Grendel is watching the northern border, Dances and his warriors are watching the west border, and Jin left with Syl on a recon mission to Victoria. So are we going to fly there? Mir asked, her whole body tingling as she fidgeted and grinned, her pupils narrowing to slits. That seems to be our only option, as the ticket ship needs repairs. Yvonne laughed and placed a hand on Mir's back. Well, I guess we'd better get ready. We'll meet by the dock in an hour and head out from there. I will go find Eckhart, Athena smiled, running back to the village, her hair blowing in the breeze. All right. Eleanor had been trying to figure out what had changed. We'll get rid of this. Eleanor had been trying to figure out what changed in the past few days between her and the Black Mage. Yes, his touch still shocked her occasionally, but it wasn't like it used to be. If she thought about it, Eleanor realized she had been responding less to the Black Mage's touch. Eleanor also seemed to be spending more time with her student, Dragon. What had changed in her relationship with her master?
Did her liking change? She was still eternally grateful to the Black Mage for saving her life, and, for a while, thought that offering herself body and soul to him would be a comparable thanks. Lately, however, that seemed less viable as the Black Mage focused solely on his mission of gathering the crystals and remaking the world. Did she see something in Dragon that she didn't see in the Black Mage? For one thing, Dragon was more personable, and he wasn't an ethereal being cloaked in a robe. Was it the support he gave her as a swordsman? The protection he offered while she cast some of her more powerful spells? Or was it something else? Was it simply the time she spent with him was more enjoyable? Her thoughts were interrupted when someone knocked on her door. "Mistress Eleanor, I have a message for you that you should hear," said one of her other students. Eleanor opened her door, shifting her weight to one leg and crossing her arms. "Oh, and what is this message I must hear?" she asked, lifting an eyebrow with a devious grin. "One of the higher-level students suggested a trip to Victoria, specifically to Kerning, and took some of his lower-classmen. However, these students aren't going as agents of the Black Wings. They've tossed aside their guises and gone as normal civilians to a place known in Kerning as Fusion. Apparently, it used to be a hot nightclub. Let's see. Nightclub there, and one of the students said he would provide tunes for them. Should I alert the master of this?" Eleanor brushed her finger across her ruby lips as she thought about what should be done. Let's see, we'll get rid of that. The preparation of the Oblivion Gauntlet's physical components was complete. Beyond that, waiting for the crystal's power to be retrained by the Guardians was the only thing that remained. Let's see. Let's make a new sentence there. "No, I think it will be all right. If you are pressed for an answer, I say I rewarded the students for their hard work and training," she said with a spark in her eye. The messenger nodded as he left. Eleanor shut her door and leaned against it, thinking about how to get Dragon to go with her and how she could go without anyone recognizing her. Quickly, she went over to her vanity desk and began applying the best makeup she'd ever... Let me try that again. Quickly, she went over to her vanity desk and began applying the best makeup Okay. Oh. Cool. She'd been saving for a special occasion. Putting in some blue contacts to turn her eyes a stunning violet. Before she finished, she walked to her closet and looked through her stacks of clothes, looking for the perfect dress. She came across the one she had made on her birthday, but that one didn't seem right. She passed it over and found an old dress from when she first started working with the Black Mage. The Lolita butterfly dress. Carefully, she pulled it out and held it up as she modeled it in the mirror, finally nodding. However, as she slipped it on, Eleanor applied a bit of magic to alter it and accommodate her current voluptuous figure, as she had purchased it many years ago. It was a snug black kimono dress, the edges and flowing sleeves decorated with white frills, while a red obi tied around her waist, accentuating her curves. Red embroidery crossed over one side of her chest, and the daring dress's bottom that stopped just below the top of her thighs. She went back to the vanity and began styling her hair. It had finally grown enough that she could curl it and drape it over one shoulder. She applied blush to her cheeks and pulled on a pair of black, thigh-high platform boots, spraying some of her favorite perfume, Black Rose, as the final touch. Come on. No! What the heck? I hate when that happens. Sometimes my synapse or on the keyboard will glitch out and it just gets stuck on a key and just go does the thing. It's like, no, don't do that. Her outfit gave her new confidence as she walked with an alluring gait, making the Cornian in the hall stop and stare as she went by, till she came to Dragon's room, knocking on his door. When he opened it, he stopped momentarily, trying to figure out who had come to his door, his hair matted and his eyes tired. "Dragon, I have a proposal for you," Eleanor said, leaning against his door frame and pulling up a leg. Dragon looked closer at her face, and then stood up in surprise, and then straightened. There we go. That's what I want. Straightened in surprise. "Mistress Eleanor? Why are you dressed like that?" he asked, obviously taken aback by her dress, even though her regular clothes were just as, if not more revealing than what she was wearing right now. "I would like you to come with me, just to go out. Not as representatives of the Black Wings, but as two people, maybe even catching a dance. And please, call me Ellie." Dragon looked her in the eyes sternly, trying to figure out what exactly Eleanor was after. But he passed it off and bowed his head slightly. "Very well, Ellie," he said, closing his door. When he emerged, Dragon wore a black suit with a white tie and shades to cover his magenta dragon's eyes. Eleanor put her arm around Dragon's and put her head on his shoulder, confusing him even more. Why was Mistress Eleanor acting so strange? She never acted like this. Eleanor may have used her feminine allure a lot in the past, but this was different. She seemed less teasing and more flirty. The two of them walked out of the castle, where she cast a potent teleportation spell, putting them just a few yards away from the club's entrance, where they could hear pounding music through the thick walls. It wasn't long before they were dancing so close that not even the neon lights could be seen between their bodies. The music was so loud their thoughts couldn't solidify. But Eleanor didn't care. She wanted to be a woman with extra dangerous curves, trying to figure out where her tiny feeling toward Dragon was going. However, over the pounding music, beyond the feel of Eleanor's body against his own, Dragon could hear the sound of something celestial. There we go. Okay. Looking around, he then saw her. She was dressed in a white leather corset, short shorts, and trench coat, hemmed in chains and spotted with a few gems at the crown of her chest.
Her strawberry blonde hair was pulled up with a cascade of curls draped over her left shoulder. And stunning green eyes with pupils exactly the same as dragons. Okay. Everything seemed to fade into the dark of the room. The room's dark, and his focus remained on her. She took a drink of the dark liquid in her glass and then sensed his gaze as she locked eyes with him. She was all he saw for a moment, and then something sprouted from her back. Pure white wings with aqua light filling the dark corner of the room as the same aqua light began to form around her hands. "Drake, is everything all right?" Eleanor asked. Dragon looked back to Eleanor. Dragon looked to Eleanor and then back to the corner of the room, but the woman was gone. He nodded as the two of them made their way to a booth, talking with another couple that had sat down with them. But Dragon's mind was elsewhere. Was that woman who he thought it was? All right. Well, we got some new viewers in here. Welcome, welcome. I hope you're at least mildly entertained by what you hear here tonight. We're just kind of going through the chapter again to make sure all the edits over here of my editing software is satisfied, so that way we can hopefully wrap it up tonight. And if you are a viewer and you find that you can't chat, it's because I've had a few people come in who were like scammers. So to try and keep them from getting anybody else, I have made it just a followers only chat. That is why. So just trying to cut down on scammers is really what I'm after right now. So yeah, that's why. Okay. They had been traveling for a day and finally... okay. Settled down as night began creeping in. Eckhart searched... Blech. That didn't taste too good. Eckhart searched for some wood while Yvonne, Mir, and Athena were setting up their beds and checking the surrounding area for for snakes or other unwanted creatures that could give a nasty sting during the night. When Eckhart returned, Yvonne cast a fire spell, lighting up the night and bringing a warm glow to them as they would make small talk or speak of their adventures in the past. Not long after, Yvonne whispered something to Mir, and they walked away from the camp into the dark. "Those two grow closer all the time," Athena said wistfully, watching them disappear into the dark. Just get rid of that, because we said it twice already. Eckhart rocked his head from side to side, cracking his neck, then checked the supply of shuriken in his claw. Athena moved closer to him, putting her head on his shoulder, and watched the flames as they dance. Eckhart turned his head to her, and then looked away. Looked back to the flames, not saying a word. Okay, back to the fire. No! What the heck? Eckhart, why, when we finally have a moment to ourselves, do you close yourself off? Do you close yourself? Athena asked.
Eckhart sighed heavily and took off his mask. I've never really been much of a person to talk. I spent most of my youth training, and even before then it was pretty much trying to survive with Oz. Athena picked her head up and turned his head to her, locking eyes with him as though she were looking straight into his soul. Eckhart, you do not need to be so guarded around me. I know you've let me in little by little, but there is still much that I don't know about you. You wouldn't know where to begin, Eckhart interrupted, pulling his head from her hands and looking back to the flames, looking back to the fire. Fire! Then let me attempt, Athena murmured. Eckhart looked back at her with eyes that almost seemed sad. Athena, it's not that I don't want to let you into my life. It's once you're there, I'm worried I can't protect you. Oops, the wrong you're. Athena felt her cheeks become warm before she let out a small chuckle. I think I can take care of myself. I'm not that weak, you know. That's not what I mean, Eckhart retorted. There we go. Taking off his mask and showing a scorch mark in the shape of a seal on the inside of his mask. When I was just starting to train, Mihail was in charge. Mihail was in charge to get us to do our best, overseeing what would eventually become the Nightwalkers, and partially overseeing the Thunderbreakers. Irina helped teach the Blaze Wizards, and Irina helped teach the Blaze Wizards with the Empress's help, and would sometimes substitute for Mihail in the Thunderbreakers. However, for some reason, I would have 3 times as much trouble learning everything being taught to us Nightwalkers, and I was falling behind. Eventually, Mihail began training me at a slower pace at the end of the day, but that only led to tireless teasing and constant torment from the others. Mihail tried to stop it, but it only made things worse. In desperation to catch up, I talked to my sister Oz, who had learned who was training to be a Blaze Wizard. She had learned that when a student gains enough experience, they Come on. Okay. She had learned that when students gain enough experience, they can contract with a guardian fairy. Umbra is actually my second guardian. I couldn't stand the teasing, so I went to the palace and snuck into Shinsu's temple, where the contract would be made. I tried to perform the contract, but instead of calling a guardian fairy,
I called a demon from another world. Instantly, it took over my body. And began using it as a puppet. Thanks to Hawkeye, Mihail, and Cygnus, they were able to... They pinned me down long enough to seal away that creature within my body. Many times, Oz tried to get it to let go of me and return to its world by releasing the seal, but time after time, it would only take over. I nearly killed Oz once, my own sister. The seal was placed... seal had been placed on my forehead, but when I was young, the demon tried to get out from under the seal, at which the seal would glow and pin him back down. As you can imagine, this caused even more teasing problems. So Hawkeye made me this mask to keep it hidden. Eckhart turned the mask over in his hands again and looked into the flames. As Athena put her arms around him and hugged him close. Oh, okay, I see. I'm so sorry, Eckhart. I had no idea you went through that. If you let me, I can heal the wounds left in your heart, she said, placing her hand on his shoulder. We'll see, Eckhart replied coldly, as a seal began to glow on his forehead, making him put his mask back on and then take up a watch just outside the fire's light. Athena slumped her shoulders as she watched him go. She could understand his fear of letting another person get too close to him, especially with this seal on the monster within him. However, she wasn't about to give up. He was too important to her to let him bear his burden alone. She unbuttoned the cowl around her neck and set it aside, wiping the sweat away from where it had been and loosening a couple buttons on her blouse to let the cool evening breeze touch her skin as she got up and followed Eckhart. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so it appears we're about halfway through and we got about another 10 minutes. Let's see if we can get to the end here, guys. How many people think we can get to the end of this chapter before 2 hours hits, huh? If you think we can get there, put a 1 in the chat. If not, put a 2. Yep. Okay. Got 1 for 2. Anybody else? Okay, we got 1 says yes, 1 says no. All right. Let's try. Well, we're kind of like editing at the same time, so it's going to probably be a little bit longer. Maybe we'll see if we go a little bit longer, but we'll see, because I have a really early day tomorrow. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get all of it done. Also, if I keep yapping like this, I'm not going to get anything done, so let's go! It didn't take long until Yvonne and Mir were far away from the campsite, where the two of them climbed a small rock and watched the stars pass overhead. Mir leaning against Yvonne's chest, listening to his heart. It was strong for a human. Nope, it wasn't for a human, but nothing like her kind.
Questions were mounting in Mir's heart as of late. Questions she had been afraid to ask from the start, even when she first told Yvonne how she felt. Master Yvonne, may I ask something of you? Something personal? Yvonne leaned up slightly and placed a hand on her bare arm. Anything, Mir. Oops. He answered kindly. Fear welled up in Mir's chest, making it almost hard to breathe as she began to lose her resolve, but pushed through it, looking up at Yvonne with eyes filled with sad fear. Hold on. Got an itch on my leg over here. Ah! There we go. Would you have preferred that a human had fallen in love with you? Yvonne was taken aback. Yes, it was a bit interesting falling in love with a dragon, not to mention that Mir was a direct descendant of the great onyx dragon Afrin. The silence of Yvonne's indecision made Mir wonder whether she was the one he wanted to be in love with, making her tremble. She watched him as they walked around the village. She watched him as they walked around. Let's see, Herb Town Village. Oops. Noticing how the human girls would always catch his attention. Ever since she'd learned to take on a human form as a young dragon, Mir experienced many new and unfamiliar feelings and emotions, the same kind other dragons she had spoken with referred to as weak human emotions. What she was experiencing with Yvonne was anything but weak. In fact, it was the strongest emotion she had ever felt. A long, uncomfortable silence fell over them as Mir turned away and sat up, staring toward the horizon. Yvonne's thoughts raced, but everything he tried to say wouldn't come as he remembered the hundreds of little moments he experienced with Mir, from when she was born to when she first kissed him. To be honest, Mir, Yvonne started as Mir turned away and shut her eyes tightly, not wanting to hear the heart-shredding sentence, bracing for what may come. I can't see myself with any other woman. Yes, there are nice human girls, but none of them. Let's see. But none will ever share our bond. No one will ever be able to know me as you do. Not to mention that your emotions run far deeper than any human I've ever met. Okay, let's try this. Not even Athena's emotions run as deep as yours. Yvonne stood to his full height, walking to the edge and letting the breeze blow past him as the smell of sweet grass tickled his nostrils and tousled his hair. So, to answer your question, Mir, no, I wouldn't prefer a human woman. Mir stopped shaking as the words hit her, turning back to see Yvonne holding his hand to her. Mir ignored his hand and jumped up, grabbing hold of his shirt and pressing her lips to his as she pushed them both to the ground. For a moment, Yvonne struggled under her strength as a wave of her ferocious power surged through him. But it settled as he put his arms around her and pressed her closer to himself, feeling the tears of thankfulness falling from Mir's eyes onto his cheeks. Thank you, Master Yvonne, she said, wrapping her arms around him and hugging him tightly, but mindful not to crush him, which she could no doubt easily do if she wasn't careful. Yvonne brushed his fingers through her soft hair and kissed the top of her head. From the shadows, Eckhart watched, trying in his own way to find an answer to his predicament. But these two seemed to overcome their differences easily. What was he missing that would allow him to let Athena... Wait. What was he missing that would allow him to let Athena... Closer. There we go. He turned around and jumped from branch to branch back to camp when he saw Athena through a beam of moonlight, seeming to do some sort of dance or meditation. He quickly swung around the next tree and stopped just outside the light, entranced by how she flowed through each movement. He then recognized it as something he'd learned from one of the other ninja masters he had spoken to, called Tai Ching, a form of meditative martial art. With each movement she made, Eckhart studied her, watching as she would slowly move through each motion, then hearing a tune that she hummed. He recognized it as the tune he learned as a small child before his parents were killed. A tune Eckhart often sang to Oz when they were kids to help her fall asleep. Even now, Oz would sometimes ask him to sing that song as she fell asleep, bringing back memories of when he and Oz were small and their family was all together. For what seemed like an hour, he watched as she shifted through each stance, finally finishing by pressing her hands together as though she were praying. Eckhart was about to return to camp, but something made him stop and look back to Athena as she stood in the moonlight. Athena breathed calmly and opened her eyes to see Eckhart standing before her, just out of arm's reach. His cloak pulled around him and his mask casting a dark shadow over his eyes so that she couldn't see them. Couldn't see them, nor the small tear that ran down his cheek as he stood there. Athena, it's not that I don't want you to be close to me. I'm afraid of what might happen if I let my guard down and the seal were to break. What if it were to come after... Athena walked up and put a finger to his mask on his lips, hushing him, and then removed his mask. Placing both hands on the sides of his head, she bent his head down and stood on her toes, kissing his forehead where the seal was. Have faith in me, Eckhart. I won't be killed so easily, she said, before pressing his lips to his and lacing her fingers behind him, the moon being the only witness. All right, so Felkiar, yes, your prediction has come true. We are not going to be able to get through this entire thing this stream. We are, let's see. What's half of 26 would be 13, so we're just a little bit past the halfway mark. But we are not going to be able to go all the way through. And yeah, this is actually the second pass. So we're not going to be able to make it all the way through. But, yeah. Let's see. So yeah, thanks guys for coming. I hope you all at least had some entertainment and were... I hope the story that I was my story that I've written over here, at least entertained you in some way. Despite the stops and editing and stuff like that. Next week, I'll probably do some more editing of this off camera and probably get it up on fanfiction.net for you to read. Next week, we shall be getting back to this. We'll do another writing stream, but we're going to be probably doing chapter 23. Not sure if I'll be doing some off camera or just starting it, on camera or whatever. But we will be doing that.